Breaking news, a shooting at the Naval Air Station in Pensacola, Florida. Emergency personnel on the scene right now. The base locked down, according to an alert on its Facebook page, and 5 people have been transported to local hospitals. We're also told that the suspect has been killed. An active shooter reported earlier in the day, the suspect now killed, and there are reports of injuries. I want to bring in NBC's Pete Williams, who's following the story this morning. Pete, what are your sources telling you?
Well, Savannah, the first reports of this actually came about 3 hours ago, about 2.5 hours ago. About 6:30 this morning is when these first calls began to come in. The area hospital said 5 people had been transported after the base was on lockdown. This is the Pensacola Naval Air Station, and of course it's the second shooting at a military facility in the past week. Earlier this week there was a shooting of civilian employees at the Pearl Harbor Naval facility just ahead of the celebration of the Pearl Harbor attack. We're told now by the Navy that there may have been, in addition to the person who was firing the shots, one other person killed. We don't have a firm number on the number of people who were injured in the shooting, and we don't know who the person is who was firing the shots, whether it was a Navy person, someone in uniform, a civilian employee, or someone unconnected to the base. So we're still waiting to get more information about this rapidly developing story. And of course, Savannah, one thing that the military is going to want to look into here is what happened today, a copycat shooting based on someone who was somehow inspired or triggered to act by what happened earlier this week, or is there some other connection between these two? Those are questions, of course, to be answered in the days to come. But for now, it looks like the situation has ended with the death of the gunman, and now the work is to try to find out what was going on here, what the motive was.
And then the Navy did, I believe, tweet out that there, as you indicated, is one more fatality at least. The local hospital there has said that at least 5 patients were transported there, but we don't know the nature of their injuries. I guess the calls started coming in around 6:30 a.m., so as you say, about a couple of hours ago. But the good news, if there is any, is that the situation is now resolved and that the shooter is down. You know, you talked about what happened at Pearl Harbor, the base there earlier this week, and now we see what happened here. I mean, you would think a military base would be one of the more secure places in this country, and there's obviously procedures to get in and out, but then again is also this raises the specter of it, whether it could be someone on the inside who had credentials to get in there.
Well, and we've seen that happen before at other military facilities. Yes, in one sense, military facilities are secure because you have highly trained people and you have military police around. On the other hand, obviously, you have a lot of armed personnel.
Absolutely. Well, we will continue to follow this unfolding situation even as we speak. At the Naval Air Station in Pensacola, they call this the cradle of naval aviation training, a town of about 50,000 people. We've been told that there is one shooter who has been killed. It was a lockdown situation on the base, an active shooter, moments of obvious fear and panic this morning. 5 patients have been transported to the local hospital there. No word on the nature of their injuries, and the Navy now just reporting that there's one additional fatality as well. We will continue to follow this much more on NBCnews.com, also MSNBC.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.